Our gospel lesson this morning is from the Gospel of John. We are in chapter 6, and these are verses 24 through 35. Once the crowd realized that neither Jesus nor his disciples were there, they got into the boats and went to Capernaum in search of Jesus. And when they found him on the other side of the lake, they asked him, "Rabbi, when did you get here?" And Jesus answered, "Very truly, I tell you, you are looking for me not because you saw the signs I performed, but because you ate the loaves and had your fill. Do not work for food that spoils, but for food that endures to eternal life, which the Son of Man will give you. For on him God the Father has placed his seal of approval." And then they asked him, "What must we do to do the works God requires?" And Jesus answered, "The work of God is this, to believe in the one he has sent." And so they asked him, "What sign then will you give that we may see it and believe you? What will you do?" "Our ancestors ate the manna in the wilderness. As it is written, he gave them bread from heaven to eat." And Jesus said to them, "Very truly I tell you, it is not Moses who has given you the bread from heaven, but it is my Father who gives you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is the bread that comes down from heaven and gives life to the world." "Sir," they said, "always give us this bread." And then Jesus declared, "I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty." This is the reading of the word of our Lord. You may be seated. Every Sunday I try to remind you how much I love you. And maybe it happens often enough that you think it's flippant or something, but I've got to tell you, from the depth of my soul to every place in my heart, is absolutely true. Now, here's the amazing part of that, and it's not how much I love you at all. The amazing part is that God loves you even more, way more, enormously more. I am so limited in my capability to love compared to God that there is no comparison whatsoever. He loves you that much. When he was telling the disciples and all those who had followed him what we read this morning, he was trying to love them and show them what really, really mattered. What happened in our passage today? Why follow Jesus? We can think of all kinds of reasons why we might want to follow Jesus, but why did they do it? Because they got fed, and they wanted to get fed again. Now, it's interesting because the day before was the day of the loaves and fishes. You remember that story? Where Jesus fed 5,000. And with just a few loaves and a couple of fish, there was even leftovers after everyone had had their fill. Jesus fed 5,000. Now, if you feed people, they're likely to come back, aren't they? We're good at it. Yeah, we're going to do that today, in fact. We're going to feed people. It's something we do well, and it's something that Jesus did well. But he admonished them, and he said, "You only came for the food. It's the only reason you showed up, because you wanted to eat again. But I have something more important for you than food that fills your belly." Now, I would call that a classic bait and switch. Do you know what a bait and switch is? Yeah, that's when you see the television advertised for only $99.95 and you run down because you've been wanting to buy that television, and when you get there they said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, we're all out of those TVs. But for only $100 more, we have a much better TV that we can sell you." That's called bait and switch. Jesus did it really, really well. One of the churches I served, we had a Wednesday night program, and I've probably told you about this before, but I'll remind you that on Wednesday night we had a meal at our church there, and then we had like a Bible school program. We had an adult Bible study. Sometimes we had choir practice, all on Wednesday nights. But it started with a meal. Well, we had a church council meeting, and somebody stood up and said, "I'm sick and tired of these Wednesday night meals." Now, the interesting thing is that we were a little church, and on Wednesday night, when you counted all the adults that were there and all the kids were there, it was more than on Sunday morning. In fact, it was like 75 people would come regularly on Wednesday nights. Well, the kids, sometimes they get a little rowdy. Sometimes the adults could hear them running through the sanctuary on Wednesday nights. I'm sick and tired of those kids messing up my church. And they only come for the food. If we just get rid of that meal, we can be done with these kids. That was what they had to say. Of course, I knew and told them the reason we have the meal is to attract the kids. Now, I entitled this "Wrong Reason, Right Message." The kids came for the food, but they also got what? A little helping of Jesus, didn't they? They got the right message. They did the crafts. They sang the songs. I'll tell you, I remember Bible school when I was a kid. I loved Bible school. Do you know Bible school was 2 weeks long when I was a kid? Yeah, 2 weeks long. And it was every morning. We got done around noon, so it was 3 or 4 hours, 5 days a week for 2 weeks that we did Bible school. Now, I have to admit, I really liked Bible school because they served red Kool-Aid. I liked red Kool-Aid. We didn't have sweets in my house when growing up. Sweets weren't a part of what we had at home. And so, they'd give you a cookie with it or something. Oh, amazing. I just loved red Kool-Aid and a cookie. And you know what? I learned the songs because I was there. And I still sing the songs, and they still touch my heart. I love all the children's songs because they touch my heart and they take me back to a time when I was innocent, when I was a child. It's beautiful to have been there. But why did I go? For the red Kool-Aid. And because Mom told me I had to, Yeah, I think she liked the mornings off, No kids. Jesus said, "I will give you eternal food, and I am the eternal food." That's something. Not like the bread that spoils. My body, my blood. Eternal. I saw some previews for a movie a few years ago. It's probably been a lot of years ago now. I admit I never saw the movie. I just saw the previews. It just didn't look that interesting to me. But it was a movie called Wedding Crashers. Did you hear about the movie called Wedding Crashers? There were two guys that would just show up at wedding receptions. Why did they go? For the food, And there were so many people at these wedding receptions, nobody knew they didn't belong there. And so they would go to the wedding receptions and eat for free and party and just crash random weddings. We're supposed to be followers of Jesus. And Jesus loved food, and he loved a party, didn't he? And we have examples of that. In fact, his first miracle was performed at a big wedding party that he went to, and they ran out of wine. Jesus loved a party, and as followers of Jesus, it's okay if we party. And you know what? It's even okay if people come for the party. Yeah, it's all right. I don't care why people come to church. Just come, and maybe you'll walk away with something that is even more important than the reason that you came. Jesus gave the people the right message, even though they showed up for the wrong reason. We need to be prepared to do that also. Kids come for the food, that's great. They come for the games, that's great. Sometimes they come for the hugs. You know that? Because a lot of kids just don't get them, and we all need them. And so they come for the love, they come for the acceptance. We don't care why they come, but the memories that they take away from here might be like the memories that I took away from those years when I spent time at Bible school. I got to experience Jesus, I got to experience the hugs, I got to experience the right reason, the right message, and I got to remember all those wonderful songs. You know, a lot of people, they go on mission trips, and one of the things we always said when as mission teams was that you can't preach to a hungry person. You know, you got to feed them first, get their bellies full, and then you can preach to them. Then you can talk to them. Then you can give them those memories that the rest of us carry away. That's all this is about. There's a book I read one time. It was called The Subversive Pastor. I like that. It's a good name, Subversive Pastor. Now, this book was all about how if you want to get something done in the church, you have to work behind the scenes. So, you know, if I wanted to do something huge in this church, like we're growing so fast, we need to expand the parking lot, right? I was told there's property out there we could do that on, by the way. We could expand the parking lot. I wouldn't go to the church council and just say, I want to expand the parking lot, because that kind of falls dead right there, you know. Instead, I would invite each member of the church council out to lunch, you know. And I would one-on-one talk to them, and I would try to build a consensus, and I would try to answer questions about the idea. And then when we have our church council meeting, I'd already know who was for it and who was against it. That's the subversive pastor. I'm terrible at that, by the way. Yeah, that's never been me. I like the idea of it, but some of you are actually good at that. You know, it's kind of the political piece of getting things done. And there's folks here in the pew that are good at building consensus and passing out ideas and trying to get some things done. We need you subversive folks out there that know Jesus, because you have an opportunity to help other people know Jesus. Have you ever invited a friend to dinner? You know, it's a good opportunity to talk to them. And you don't need to invite them just with the idea, ooh, I'm going to hit them over the head with a Bible when they get here. That's not the point at all. But you know what? Just being in your presence, just building a relationship with these people, it's important because of who you are. And they'll notice who you are, probably. If they walk into your home, they're likely to see that cross hanging on the wall. They're likely to notice that, the head of this house is Jesus, sign that you've got there. Those things will make an impression on them when they come to your house. They might even ask you a question about it. It's an opportunity to respond and to say, we would love to have you join us sometime for church. Because I'll tell you what, if you invite someone to church, what are the odds they're going to come? Almost zero. And if you invite someone to your house for dinner, what are the odds they're going to go? Really good. Because when you invite them to your house for dinner, you have honored them. When you invite them to church, you've given them an obligation that they don't want to fulfill. We need to be creative about that. And our pews, they're not very full today, are they? No. Makes me think about building those relationships and being invitational. We need to be creative. In one of the churches that I served, we started something called the community fair. The community fair wasn't about preaching and evangelism, at least not overtly. No, it was kind of subversive. When we advertised the community fair, we would tell people that there were 6 hours of live music on the stage in the park. We didn't tell them it was all Christian music, just live music. And we had praise bands from all the area churches there, and they sang up a storm, and it was wonderful. At the community fair, we had face painting, and we had a lot of bouncy blow-up things in the park. We advertised the free hot dogs and the free ice cream, and people came for the free hot dogs and the free ice cream and 6 hours of live music. We had a motorcycle show, and all these guys would ride in with their Harleys, and they'd park them all in a row, and they'd hang their leathers up on the windshield, and the leathers all featured a big cross on them because it was a Christian motorcycle group that sponsored that for us. Now, the funny thing is, when we told them when we advertised that we were having a motorcycle contest, rally, show there as part of the community fair, a whole lot of guys show up that didn't wear the Christian leathers. Some of them had skulls and crossbones painted onto their Harleys, and they lined right up alongside all of the others, and the judges went through and they judged the paint jobs and all these things on the motorcycles. It was powerful. Now, this was held at a big city park, and afterwards, we were responsible for cleaning the park. That's part of the deal, You got to leave it better than you found it. We had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people show up for the community fair, and I spent hours picking up cigarette butts afterwards, from the park, and I thought, that's awesome. They came for the wrong reason. They got the right message. And that's what we need to do. Did you notice that Natalie and Paul made an announcement this week on Facebook? Anybody notice that? That they were retiring. I can't imagine what that looks like for them, but I'm sure they have a vision of that. I read almost 100 comments that were underneath that retirement announcement. Some people were sad that they wouldn't be able to shop there anymore, but the ones that intrigued me the most were the people that said they wouldn't be able to stop and give Paul a hard time anymore. And I thought to myself, we ought to invite those people to church because they'd be able to give Paul a hard time on every Sunday, you know? Paul could be our new bait. The people would come for the wrong reason and they'd get the right message. I'm kind of liking this. One of my favorites was a small group of young couples in a church. And every year, this small group bought season basketball tickets to their local high school. And on Friday nights, you would find this church group of young couples all seated there in the bleachers watching the high school basketball game. Now, the interesting thing about this is they didn't just buy enough tickets for themselves. They bought one extra set of 2 tickets. And every Friday night, they invited some different friends from work or from other places where they met them, and they would invite these friends to come for a basketball game. Come enjoy, and we go out to dinner afterwards, they'd tell them. Now, what are the likelihood of people coming to join you for a basketball game? Pretty good, huh? I think pretty high. What are the likelihood of people coming when you invite them to church? Not nearly as good. I like the idea of building relationships in ways like that. Come and join us for a basketball game. We'll go out to dinner afterwards. It'll be fun. They would show up for the wrong reason, hopefully get a message that's important. We need to be invitational. It's interesting. People are actually looking for God. They look in so many different places. They try all these different brands of spirituality. And in many cases, they do not get the fulfillment that they're really looking for. And that is because Jesus is the only way. It's the only way. And until they've been exposed to Him and people that know Him and people that love Him like you, they're never going to fill the hole that is in their belly, and they can eat all the food they want. It won't help. We need to be lovers of souls. We need to be a reflection of Jesus. And we need to make sure that no matter why they come, that the message is always there. The good message. The message of love. The message of hope. The message of the gospel, the message of forgiveness, the message of grace, and the message of salvation. Those are the things that we need to make sure that they get when they come for the wrong reason. Sometimes, as Christians, our faith isn't obvious. Sometimes as Christians, our values betray us. Sometimes as Christians, the topics that we undertake, people don't recognize the Christian in us. This is an article from the Huffington Post. It was written by Byron Dorgan. He's a former U.S. Senator from North Dakota. And he entitled the article, it's just a little piece of the article, but he entitled the article, "The 6 Words a Christian Should Never Want to Hear." Conviction can come at strange times and in strange places. I learned this the other day. A coworker saw that I mentioned this blog on Twitter. We talked for a few minutes about faith matters and about God's will and about making tough decisions as a Christian. It was a nice conversation and a rare one for a secular corporate office. And then my coworker said 6 words I hope I never hear again. "I didn't know you were a Christian." Talk about convicting. I thought it was obvious, but obviously not. I didn't know quite what to say, so I responded with the first words that came to mind. "Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I am." Smooth. I've worked with this person for more than a year. We've had plenty of interactions in the office, and still the evidence lacked. This bothers me. It's not that I've done anything to suggest that I'm not a Christian. It's that I apparently haven't done anything to suggest that I am. And that's a problem. If you read the whole article, you will know that Byron talks about a variety of things that he could have done different that would have made it clear to people that he was a Christian, that he was approachable as a Christian. For instance, in his cubicle that he worked in, he had nothing there that would indicate that he was a Christian. Things in his conversations, just a variety of things. Sometimes we try too hard to blend in, and I'm guilty of it. There are many times when I just don't want people to know I'm a pastor. It never doesn't seem helpful sometimes to just wear that chip on my shoulder, I'm a pastor. Because then I don't get to have a normal conversation with them, Then they feel like they have to meet certain expectations. Then they might just want to reject me altogether. And so my leading, isn't the leading thing that I might say to a new person isn't, "I'm a pastor." No. We need to be creative. We need to be lovers of souls. We need to be reflections of Jesus. And right or wrong, the message must always be there.